If you want to experience the closest thing to being a prisoner, join the US Army. You'll file lots of paperwork and be convinced that what you're doing is a wise choice. In my case, it was a volunteer situation, so I didn't need any convincing, I just needed a job. The economy is always bad, but at that time of my recruitment, it was the worst ever. In my late 20s, I enlisted in the US Army back in 2007, expecting to be treated as a professional. However, I had no idea what lied ahead. I had just graduated from college with a business degree. Why didn't I go in as an officer? Because my ASVAB score was a few points off. My bank account and I couldn't survive any longer, so the decision was obvious. At that time I said goodbye to my girlfriend and left Gainesville, Florida on my adventure. Jacksonville, Florida is where the recruits, including myself, all gathered in a worn-out hotel. They treat you politely from the recruiter's office all the way up to here, but this is where it all ends. This is your last taste of freedom. This is where you either back out or give in. This is the moment. I spoke with a bunch of strangers, all ready to head into the war in Iraq, all eager to kill the enemy. They encouraged me to become an officer as soon as possible, and I of course thanked them for that. From there, we were all eventually separated, as if being trafficked by a silent mob. We finally arrived to what's called reception in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. This is where they shave all your hair off, give you all of your basic equipment and clothing. This is the place where you will behave just like a robot. Marching, pivoting, stopping, listening, formations. The chow hall where you eat but don't talk. This is where you begin to transition. This is where you really regret the decision you made to join, where you begin to feel empty. It's a dark place where you're yelled at, expected to learn quickly, and learn how to be punished. You are taught to wake up multiple times during the night, to lose precious sleep, to be a zombie. This is honestly where I really wanted to quit, but they didn't allow me. It's called AWOL, absent without leave. There is no turning back. Your freedom belongs to the government now. They asked who wanted to leave. There were about 50 of us in that formation. I held my hand high. I was the only one with his hand held high. The drill sergeant and everyone else simply ignored me. More of the same, just like reception. Continue to chop all your hair off. Continue to follow orders. After a while you start to feel like a prisoner, and hopefully you get along with your fellow inmates. You'll only get to call home when they let you. You'll miss everyone you love with greater intensity. You'll go through all kinds of emotions that a person can possibly go through in basic training. Anyone, and I mean anyone, who denies this fact is lying to you, pretending to be tough. In basic training, you learn how to dress like a soldier, how to act like one, and perform like one. You'll dress in the same 2 types of clothing every single day, from battle dress to physical training. Physical training is nothing but running, marching, sit-ups and push-ups, not really much else. Then you'll train with your rifle, either an M16 or M4, the only typical rifles of the US Army. Is it fun? Yes, but it's overrated in a way that only a soldier would understand. Bayonet training is simply attaching a long knife at the end of your rifle and stabbing targets. Not that you'll ever use such training, but it was kind of fun anyway. Similar to grenade training. Luckily I never had to toss a real grenade, because the lines were far too long. Imagine that. So many fresh recruits, so many people who just had to join for pretty much the same reasons. You'll learn to call others by their last names. You learn to stand at attention or in parade rest. I especially found parade rest to be interesting, as if standing while being handcuffed. They'll give you dog tags to let you know who your master is, to sit and stand when ordered to. Why so much bitterness on my end, you might ask? Because it's the universal truth as a soldier. Basic training is one large psychological torture chamber. You just want to get it over with. As graduation day approaches, you become anxious to leave such a depressing, worn-out place. When you graduate, you get to march in your barely used Army service uniform. It's the one where you get to show off all your badges and extra decorations, like a Christmas tree. Anyway, basic training was nothing but a jungle gym of ropes, guns, slavery, and patience. My first night in basic, I had a dream that I woke up back home until I woke up in hell again. Every night was a nightmare because I woke up in the same Bay Area with 20-something soldiers. It was Groundhog Day every day. Play the role of a soldier, get hazed, rinse, and repeat. As if 2 full months wasn't enough of being treated like an incarcerated criminal, my AIT was 4 months long, which meant slightly less hazing from those who train you. Sure, it felt good to be treated slightly better than the past 2 months. It felt different. All of a sudden, since I was an all-source intelligence analyst soldier, I was respected more. Not only by those who commanded us, but by my battle buddies as well, my fellow soldiers. We all felt as if the most difficult part was over. And in a way, we were correct. However, it wasn't until new problems began to arise. Military intelligence sounds funny. Most soldiers would say that intelligence in the Army doesn't exist, but it does. The School of Military Intelligence was very demanding. I had to retake several tests. All of us wanted a pass to go off base, if we were all good enough with great behavior. But it's the Army, so they have to keep you angry. Thus, they often told us we weren't allowed. Going off base was a breath of temporary freedom, something barely anyone these days understands. That's because most people take their freedom for granted. They have no idea how precious it is. For 4 straight months, we climbed mountains by marching and running at higher altitudes. I remember taking several physical training tests, gasping for air as we finished our running. Push-ups and sit-ups were simply the meat and potatoes of a soldier's physical performance. Sit-ups ruined your back, while push-ups actually made you strong and confident. We attended our classroom training, learning about conventional warfare and terrorism. The professors or trainers were polite, but you could tell they were tired of their jobs. As intelligence analysts, we all held a top-secret clearance with additional access, something called sensitive compartmented information. It made everyone feel like James Bond. In the Army, sarcasm, monotony, and embracing the pain of being a soldier was a daily experience. Everyone just wanted to get reception, basic training, and advanced individual training over with, so that we could all venture off into a random place we were all forced to call our new home. AIT is a place where at least you feel better about being a more accomplished soldier, but the thought of being deployed constantly loomed in the back of my concerned mind. Finally, I reached my final destination as a fresh recruit, in a crazy place called Fort Hood, Killeen, Texas. 1st Cavalry, 3rd Brigade, 6-9 Squadron would be my ultimate unit, but I was bounced around at first. From 3BSTB to some other unit, they were basically trying to figure out where to separate us. Formations and more formations. Meet at this time, meet back here at that time, over and over again. Basically, a soldier is a remote-controlled human being, fulfilling order after dreadful order. It didn't matter that I joined as an enlisted specialist due to my college degree. I felt tired already. I began to think about the years to come, how they would feel, where I would be. I finally was being treated like a worthy soldier, as the final unit I was with was a little more friendly. You get to go to the mall, check out what life is like off base, and report back to your barracks. The barracks is simply where a soldier lives unless he is granted permission to live off base. Luckily, I was given such permission, as I wanted to pay my own bills and live a more sane lifestyle. I can't imagine living in the barracks year after year. I would have gone insane. It felt like a prison. I've never been to prison, but that's precisely what I imagine every time I hear the word barracks. Basically, your barracks room is the ultimate depressing living condition. You most likely have a roommate, a metal closet, a cheap hospital bed with what they call linen bed sheets. You'll feel poor and depressed. That's exactly what the Army wants you to feel. Miserable, angry, lonely, but most of all, ready to fight. The Army is about conditioning young men and women to want to take out their negative energy on something. That's where the war mentality begins to set in. They want you to become aggressive, one-track minded. All that should be on your mind is wanting to go to war and fight the supposed enemy without fear. Part of the soldier's creed, which is learned in basic training, is to destroy the enemies of the United States. They give you this warrior-like mentality. They pretend to care about your family, but in reality, they don't. Your only mission is to get in there. Forget about your family. Obey all commands without question. If your idea is efficient, makes more sense, or is innovative, they don't want to hear about it. In the Army, it's all about your Inspector Gadget closet with the same uniforms. It's about senseless repetition, physical tests at 5 o'clock in the morning while finally being released around 6 o'clock at night. I had some horrible leadership with sergeants and officers that didn't deserve the rank on their chests. I won't bore anyone with the details as to how we trained before we were deployed, but I will share this. On a detail, otherwise known as an assignment, I had a truly unique opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Though I wasn't even qualified, I drove M1A2 tanks, personnel-tracked vehicles, Humvees, enormous M88s. These are vehicles I had no license to drive. However, when the Army needs soldiers, they're flexible. We drove these vehicles one after the other to the train tracks where they were placed on trains for transport. It happened in the middle of nowhere in a place called Yermo, California. This is one of my favorite memories. Imagine getting to tell others that you drove tanks and super heavy trucks called LMTVs with tons of cargo. This all happened before we were deployed, but alas, it was time to deploy. Time to endure the worst. Skipping all the details regarding military flights, even all the helicopter rides, we all arrived in Kuwait. This is the place we arrived to prepare to enter Iraq. Nothing but heat and desert, monotony and patience. Once we deployed to our final destinations in Iraq, we were all separated into different areas in Iraq. I was fortunate enough to end up guarding a prison near Mosul, northern Iraq. This was lots of fun. I enjoyed driving a Humvee for hours for the first time, avoiding as many potholes as I could. The commanding officer in our Humvee said to run over the potholes on my side in case of an explosion. That way, the officer was most likely to survive instead of the driver. How nice, I thought. I guess that's fair enough. As an intelligence analyst, I was treated just like any other soldier, going on missions in local towns. There is no hiding behind a computer screen like the recruiter would tell you. It's mission after mission. I learned to live in a small living space called a CHU, or compartmentalized housing unit. At least it wasn't a tent. Our living space is shared with a roommate, and your space is about 5 feet by 5 feet. Here we endured the blinding sandstorms, the freezing cold, and blazing hot temperatures of Iraq. I would even work in a heavily reinforced bunker at one point. Imagine the time going by slowly. We walked everywhere, from the chow hall we ate, to the gym where we worked out and called home. They did have computers so you could write emails or surf the web, so it wasn't all that bad. What made my deployment bad was my commanding sergeant, who later became a warrant officer. I never liked him, and never will. I'm sure everyone around that clown felt the same way. Bad soldiers are far too common. My deployment had ups and downs. It was nothing but a long test of mental patience and emotional endurance. After my deployment, I headed to officer candidate school, where enlisted soldiers become officers. Before deploying, I retook my ASVAB exam and scored a 123, which was the only thing I needed to qualify. In Iraq, I flew to different locations to get a physical, blood testing, and approval from different offices. Before I deployed, I also had a special letter of recommendation from a brigadier general while I was on a detail. The detail involved welcoming troops back from Iraq and large ceremonies, so I spoke to the general then. He was super nice and was more than pleased to sign a letter of recommendation after all that hard work. Not to mention I received some cool large coins from this general and surprise handshakes. It's an army thing. Anyways, I finally arrived in Fort Benning, Georgia, where my officer training would shortly begin. Soldiers already were saluting us as we walked past them with our OCS rank on our chest. It was as if I was already an officer, being saluted. Something that was again a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We were training hard, waiting for our rotation of training to begin, but unfortunately, tragedy struck. One morning, I woke up with an unbelievable pain in my lower back and legs, unable to put my shoes on. It was the scariest part of my life, as I didn't know what to think, how to feel, what to do, who to tell. Thus, they sent me on crutches to the medical office, or sick call. That's when I began to spiral downhill psychologically. I thought to myself, why? I'm right here, ready to become an officer, which is all I wanted to do in the army. I wanted to lead soldiers into battle, be the best leader I can be, change the script for the best, make some change. But this is where it all ended, as well as my future ambitions, along with my mental and emotional endurance. They told me to look forward to a double hip replacement surgery, which later was proven completely unnecessary. I went through 8 orthopedic surgeons, with each of them arriving to different conclusions. It was too much for me to endure. At this point, I just wanted to get out of the army, to leave as soon as possible. Luckily, I was sent back to my original unit. At that time, nobody liked me anymore, because I was broken. In the army, they love you when you're at full health, but will quickly throw you away if you suffer an injury. Just like a broken toy in the hands of a child. Off to the garage sale I went. In other words, ETS, which means expiration term of service. The Rolling Stones were right, you can't always get what you want, but my service to our nation was not over with. I quickly left the army and gained as much strength as I could. This time I would serve not as a soldier, but as a civilian, an intelligence contractor, deploying to Afghanistan. Deploying as a contractor gave me the same butterflies in my stomach that I felt as a soldier. But it was different. This time I was volunteering yet again to serve our nation, but in another war zone, Afghanistan. The interesting thing about being a contractor is that I can literally quit at any time and go straight back home. This is something you can't do as a soldier. So that was a good thing to know at that time. I felt far more free. The companies I worked for were all about business and treated us all very strictly, similar to the army. They can't make you do push-ups and run early in the morning, but they all sure had very bad attitudes. Then you get to meet people who were on their 5th or 6th deployments, making crazy amounts of money. And that's exactly what contracting is all about. Making lots of money. Anything different would be a lie. This deployment to Afghanistan reminded me of the movies Rambo 2 and 3. Rambo 2 because of the greedy contractors, and Rambo 3 because I was in Afghanistan. I had the opportunity to meet the Mujahideen, otherwise known as holy warriors that protected the country. Of course, it was said they split up with the formation of the Taliban, but regardless, it was an honor. It was cold, freezing when I arrived. I wore ninja-like headcloths, the same as the Afghans did. We lived in tents, far worse than any soldier in Iraq. We slept in bays with 100 other contractors. Interpreters were included. They had tents with gyms inside too, but of course, here comes the bad news. There were incidents where grenade attacks happened inside the base, killing many personnel. There were also constant rocket attacks from outside the base, where you could die at any time. There were daily funerals from these rocket attacks, and of course, soldiers dying on missions. There were contractors who also died on missions, making me feel very scared for my life. I thought to myself, how could I have quickly signed up for this when I just survived Iraq? At that time, I still had college loans to pay off, similar to when I first signed up as a soldier. However, the army doesn't pay interest, so off to Afghanistan as a contractor I went. To make a long story short, Afghanistan was far more depressing than Iraq. Every day was the same. Talk about loneliness and a crazy mind-numbing work routine. We all were acting crazy after a while. I never was paid in full because I left Afghanistan early on 2 contracts, but I did pay off my loans. I also paid off my car in that year as a contractor, but that's about it. I feel great as a veteran. I deployed to 2 deadly war zones. I survived the rockets, mortars, and deadly roads. Dangerous helicopter rides, wherein helicopter crashes were common and still are. I'm a grateful survivor. As a veteran, I get to speak with confidence, because I've been there and done that. I'm an accomplished man. I graduated from college with a business degree, joined the army, and arrived finally to this point. A point in my life where it's time to give my wisdom and knowledge to as many people as possible. It's a time where I can preach about what matters most. Love. Not just regular love. True love. Everything that I've been through has culminated to becoming an expert in understanding this life we all live. Yes, it's a hard life for all of us most of the time, but life doesn't have to be that way. I'm here to tell you that I wrote a very special book about love, one that is original and unique. I also created an online 1-hour course, which consists of 10 videos that will teach you everything about love. I personally don't know of anyone else who is as passionate as I am when it comes to the topic of love. Most relationships fail because they don't take love seriously and thus commit the same mistakes repeatedly. Then there's the insane gender war, where lots of women hate men while lots of men hate women. It's easy to complain, to have no solutions, and instead waste your precious time arguing and pointing fingers. After my intense life experience, I can tell you that most of our world is missing out on living quality lives. Many don't even try to better themselves. They simply quickly give up on life and love. This is where I come into the picture. Yes, I can confidently say that I have solutions for any situation. I understand the pain that men and women go through, but just know that nothing is over until you say it is. I've opened up a permanent Discord server room for anyone to come anonymously and share their thoughts. I've prepared myself on all social media platforms to interact with those who need my help. Though I've shared my military and contracting experience in this special documentary style video, I have plenty of experience in other areas of my life that I can use to help countless people. As a martial artist, a bodybuilder, veteran, and philosopher, I'm prepared to devote my life to helping others. Leave the war and destruction to the immature ones who continue to keep such a chaotic mess alive. Join me in my quest to create the world's first and only army of love.